Hello, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing good. So, to continue on in my series covering the emotional stages to expect after going no contact, today I want to talk about the stage when you don't feel supported or entitled to openly grieve and express the very real sense of loss that comes as a result of your decision to remove yourself from your narcs. While we went no contact to save ourselves from the toxic behaviours of our families of origin, we find ourselves dwelling on the rare good days when we felt some semblance of love from our parents. We know all too well, though, that given their inability to feel empathy, the narcs are incapable of love, and while these displays of kind behaviour were part of the manipulative cycle of abuse, at the time they felt real. We therefore grieve the loss of the narcs' nice mask, even though we know that it was fake and merely used to keep us on the hook via intermittent reinforcement that saw us accept cruel treatment in the hope of those rare good days. We also grieve the loss of the wider community and other connections we've lost. Many of us are forced to accept collateral damage in our decision to go no contact, meaning that in order to escape our narcs, we have to cut off contact with non-narc friends and relatives who are just too risky to keep in our lives, as they remain under the narc spell and could therefore be recruited as flying monkeys and used against us. We essentially lose multiple people in one fell swoop, as if we've been hit by a catastrophic disaster. We also grieve the warm, loving family we deserved but never had. We reflect on our difficult childhoods and mourn on behalf of ourselves at that age. Even though no contact is the first step on the road to a happier future, we still experience significant loss. But unlike loss through bereavement, we feel like we've got nobody to turn to support us as we process our complicated feelings as escaped scapegoats. This is especially difficult if you're faced with well-meaning but non-trauma informed therapists and other people in your life who don't fully appreciate what you went through as the family scapegoat, and therefore can't comprehend why you would walk away from your family of origin. We've all heard the tired old catchphrases, blood is thicker than water, but she's your mum. Kids don't come with instruction manuals, your parents did their best. Oh, you only get one family. Oh, they had a terrible childhood, have some empathy. Respect your elders. They didn't hit you though, did they? We're made to feel like we're the bad guy, especially given it's guaranteed that, as they have our entire lives, the narcs have launched a smear campaign against us to control the narrative of our no contact, portraying themselves as the poor, frail, ageing parents, abandoned by their selfish, disloyal son or daughter. As a result, our grief is invalidated over and over again, and we find ourselves reluctant to tell people that we've gone no contact for fear of judgment and condemnation. Abandoning our parents is taboo and deemed to spit in the face of societal norms, particularly if you come from a traditional culture where family is everything. We see other people in our lives going through bereavement following the passing of parents and how they receive sympathy and support as they process their grief. We're essentially grieving the living, and it can be hard for people to understand why, if we're so upset, we don't just go back to our abusers. After all, in their eyes, all we need to do is pick up the phone to end our grief. That response of, at least you still have parents. We're therefore left completely alone to go through the emotional stages that follow going no contact, denied any validation or understanding from other people in our lives. When we're in a group of people and the subject of family comes up in discussion, we squirm in our seats, desperate for the topic to change, the ground to swallow us up, or both. People with normal parents who had happy childhoods are incapable of understanding why we would want nothing to do with our parents. So we find ourselves dodging questions like, what are your Christmas plans? Are you going home? What are you getting your mum for Mother's Day? And so on. What we're experiencing is something psychologists call disenfranchised grief. An example of this is when someone's beloved pet dies. They're utterly heartbroken, breaking down in tears constantly, but when someone asks what's wrong and they tell them, they're often met with, is that all? You're kind of being dramatic, don't you think? I mean, it's only a dog, buy a new one. That feeling that you don't have the right to grieve and express the emotions you're having, that there's something seriously wrong with you for feeling the way you do. For scapegoats, we can be made to feel like our decision to go no contact is an overreaction, especially if we weren't physically abused by our narcs. That feeling that other people have had it worse leads us to self-minimise and self-gaslight ourselves into thinking perhaps things weren't that bad, and leaves us vulnerable to being hoovered back into the toxic dynamic. Be assured things were that bad, otherwise you wouldn't have gone no contact to save your physical and mental health. It was not a decision you took lightly. All us scapegoats had very unique experiences with our narcs, and all that matters is how your narcs treatment negatively impacted you. You do not have to explain or compare yourself to anyone. As a scapegoat, we've also been made to feel isolated our entire lives. The odd man out, the black sheep, the problem child. We had nobody to turn to support us during our abuse, so we feel like we have nobody to turn to as we walk away from it. Scapegoating abuse is intentionally subtle and covert, affording the narcs plausible deniability in public. It can therefore be difficult for us to articulate our experiences or describe the specifics of our maltreatment to others, as normal people lack the ability to understand, for example, the many non-verbal microaggressions used to manipulate and control us. I saw a tweet recently which articulated this perfectly, that normal people can't conceive of the concept of somebody washing the dishes angrily at you. Scapegoats, however, can completely relate to that all too familiar chronic anxiety, that constant state of being hyper-aware and hyper-vigilant, always on high alert, reading the invisible signs that indicate our narcs are mad at us, feeling constantly on edge and walking on eggshells. Another form of disenfranchised grief we experience after going no contact is the lack of any closure at the end of our relationship with our narcs. When people in normal families lose their parents, perhaps due to a long illness or old age, they have time to prepare for their passing, spending quality time with them, turning to genuinely fond memories for comfort. When us scapegoats lose our parents through going no contact, we dwell on our complex mix of memories and are all too aware that we'll never receive any closure through an explanation or heartfelt apology for the way they treated us. We're left with so many unanswered questions. Why did you target me? What was the point of all this? Did you ever love me? We have to do our best to answer these questions ourselves. We have to make our own closure, and this can take a long time. After going no contact, we also grieve our lost childhoods, lost opportunities in things like our careers and romantic relationships that we endured at the hands of our narcs' intentional sabotage of everything that ever brought us joy. We'll never get justice or revenge for the way we're treated, and we're forced to accept our significant and wide-ranging losses, the narcs forever unpunished for their evil actions. At the same time as enduring our disenfranchised grief, most of us are going through the symptoms of complex trauma, a form of PTSD. I'll cover CPTSD in more depth in its own video, but to summarise, this form of trauma is the result of chronic, repeated psychological and emotional trauma in our lives, as opposed to tangible, specific events as experienced by survivors of traditional PTSD. We feel completely alone as we process all this disenfranchised grief, but there is hope for us. Awareness of narcissistic abuse has skyrocketed in recent years thanks to platforms like Quora, YouTube and Facebook groups. Scapegoating abuse is still largely underrepresented, many online narc abuse resources focusing on romantic relationships, but our little community of survivors of toxic families is growing strong. Validation of our experiences as the family scapegoat and moral support as we go through the emotional stages that follow going no contact are essential parts of the recovery process, and the way we obtain this is through connecting with other scapegoats through resources such as social media. Something else to consider is attending Al-Anon meetings, if they're available in your community. While Al-Anon is a support group for the adult children of addicts, there are many common factors we share with them as the children of narcissists. Issues like the family revolving around the disordered parent, the presence of enablers that facilitate the disordered parent's behaviour, the parentification of the children in the family, and of course, emotional and often physical child neglect. Plus, of course, addiction to substances is very common in narcissists. The more you learn about scapegoating and narcissistic abuse, the more the experiences of others will resonate with you, and you'll find that you can relate and identify with examples of narc parents' behavioural patterns, providing the validation you deserve and you've been searching for so long. So with that, look after yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.